Hello YouTube, Dr. Boomer presenting you my presentation on how to practice on a time budget. As I promised, I was going to release this video today, so hopefully you find this as insightful as I intend it to be. My dog, you can't see him, but my dog is here. He would like to help. I wish you could see him. He's adorable. Anyway, so, before we get into this, let me just explain a couple of things. Number one, don't pay too much attention to my fighting videos. I haven't been playing very much lately, and I also just got my hitbox back, and I'm still getting used to it again. I've been playing on PS4 pad for months now, so you'll just have to forgive me. It's very rough. Also, I'm going to be presenting a lot of my findings in terms of music and in terms of sports, because there's just been a lot of research done into this area of mindfulness and how to practice. So hopefully I can present it in such a way that it makes sense. And I always, invite you to, leave a comment. Let's get some discussion going. What are some of your favorite? Let's just start with the basic question. What are some of your basic practice techniques? How do you approach it? So, that being said, so let's get right into it. So the first thing we have to do is ask ourselves the question: what is the point of practicing? Well, the obvious answer to that is it's to get better. It's to learn, to study, and to experiment, to find new ways of achieving success. The end goal of practice is to get to that point whenever you go into a match and you get into what I call the zone. Some sports people call this a flow state. It's where you get lost in the game. Timothy Galway describes the zone as that mental space you fall in where there's nothing around you, it's just you. He presents this in an equation. It's capital P is equal to lowercase p minus lowercase I. Capital P meaning potential, lowercase p meaning practice, and then lowercase I meaning interference. So you have your potential. No, it's not. Though smaller p is not practice. It's performance. Excuse me. So it's potential minus is equal to your performance minus your interferences. So the point of practice is to be able to not second guess yourself, to be so confident that you go into a match and you just can fall into that zone, and everything is just second nature to you. It's just like when you get into a good book, or maybe you've noticed it when you were driving long distance, that you just kind of got into listening to your podcast or your music, what have you, and just enjoying the road. You're just lost in it. The great Russian violinist Nathan Milstein was once asked what he thought about while he performed, to which he replied, "Nothing, really. I am simply trying to not spoil the music." That should be our goal. Our goal is to not spoil the game, to not spoil our game. And so that's our end goal when it comes to practice. So how do we fall into the zone? How do we enter into the flow state? It begins with understanding this concept of mindfulness and finding ways to apply it to our practice. Mindful practice versus mindless practice. An example of mindless practice would be something as simple as just going into practice mode and you just kind of go through the motions. You practice your combos a few times. Cough, Tyler Lansdowne, cough. And there's just not much thought to it. You're just going through the motions. There's not a real purpose to it. You don't think about anything more than that. Practice is a time to work on the fundamentals, to strengthen our play, and to be mindful, to be aware of what our mistakes are, and finding ways to isolate those mistakes, to work them, to mold them, to knead them out, to get it to where it's no longer a mistake. Like, you literally cannot make this mistake anymore. Now, normally, you would do this, if you were like Tweety, you would grind for hours upon hours upon hours and just get to the point where it's muscle memory. And that is a legit way to do it. But, as we've discussed, life is too crazy. Life is too hectic. I've got too many responsibilities. I've got too many people that I have to answer to. I don't have that hours and hours. And so making my practice the most efficient way possible by finding those mistakes, by figuring out where my weaknesses are, I can work those weaknesses out, spend less time overall in the practice mode, and more time bodying everybody unranked. So now let's get into the biology of it all. Talent, according to that book that I mentioned a couple of videos ago, The Talent Code by Daniel Coyle, greatness isn't born, it's grown. There is a biological standpoint to it. And what he is talking about is myelin. That's Myelin. Myelin is simply a wrapping. It's a chemical wrapping around synapses in your brain. It's white matter, basically. And the more myelin you have, the tighter, the stronger the synapses, and the faster your reflexes are. So someone like Sonic Fox has an insane amount of myelin. The reflexes that he has, the way he's able to adapt and all that stuff, he has a lot of myelin. That might be natural, that might be the way that he approaches his practice, I don't know. I would have to interview him for that. But according to chapter 2 of The Talent Code by Daniel Coyle, like most people, I was under the impression that the key to learning skills and being human resided in our brain's neurons, that flickering web of interconnected nerve fibers, and the famous synapses through which they link and communicate. But Fields and Bartzokas, the scientists that he was speaking to, informed me that while they still consider neurons and synapses to be vitally important, the traditional neuron-centric worldview is being fundamentally altered by this revolution. This humble-looking insulation, it turns out, plays a key role in the way our brains function, particularly when it comes to acquiring skills. The revolution is built on 3 simple facts. 1. Every human movement, thought, or feeling is a precisely timed electric signal traveling through a chain of neurons and a circuit of nerve fibers. 2. Myelin is the insulation that wraps these nerve fibers and increases signal strength, speed, and accuracy. 3. The more we fire a particular circuit, the more myelin optimizes that circuit, and the stronger, faster, and more fluent our movements and thoughts become. So then the question comes, how do we build more myelin? I think we approach it, we have to approach it in a couple of different ways. This is an e-sport, so approaching it from a sports point of view is very important. Repetition. Repetition is one way, and is a very effective way of growing that myelin, of insulating the synapses. But like I said, we don't always have the time to grind out hours and hours. We have to be more efficient. So that way, I think we need to approach it more like how like Itzhak Perlman, the great violinist Itzhak Perlman, how he approaches practice whenever he finds an issue that he needs to work out. So first off, the easiest thing to do, according to Simon Fisher, the great violin pedagogue. Let me pull up my notes here. Whatever stage you are learning at, the fastest progress comes from being able to look at the issue from many different angles. And this is much easier to isolate whenever you take it at a slower pace. This way, whenever you take something from a slower pace, whenever you slow it down, it allows your brain to process what it is you're working on, and thus allows that myelin to grow. It grows faster. But you have to be extremely mindful. So how do we do that? Well, in my next video, I'll show a more practical way about how I do this personally. But I think something simple that we can do is we can, potentially get out of the habit of going right back into our matches without putting any thought into it, by just hitting that restart button right away. I don't believe that does us any kind of service. All it does is it feeds into, I forget what it is. It's like I think it's the ego, or it's the id or the ego. I can't remember which one, but it feeds into that primal instinct, and it enforces a disconnection between between our brain and our body, our thoughts and our physical movements. So I think it's a really good idea to recognize when you need to do that. And I would actually challenge everybody to start doing that, especially if you're not in a tournament setting, because I can understand, you could argue, you want to change you want to get inside your opponent's head, you want to change the pace, you want to put it back in your favor, you want to get that momentum back. But like whenever you're working on things, if you're working on ranked by yourself, I would say maybe don't hit that restart button too fast. I would also say, like in practice mode, when you're practicing combos and you mess up, don't just automatically hit that restart button. Let the combo finish out, and then take a time to think about what you did, about what was going on, and how you can fix it. There's those the inputs that you put in to the side. Look at those. See if there's, maybe your pattern's messed up there. Record yourself. Watch film. This is back to a sports analysis. But you can watch yourself and figure out, like, hey, this guy was doing this combo over and over again. What can I do to punish it? And yes, I recognize these are very common traits to do, but I don't think that everybody does them. We talk about them, but we don't seem to always do them. And these are very simple tasks on how to level up our game. I would also recommend taking notes. Physical notes, handwritten notes, like you would in school. Our brains process things so much better when we write them down. And so, again, in the next episode, I'll show you my notebook where I keep my notes. I'll also showcase like my practice routine. Having a practice routine is really good too, because again, it sets a goal. It sets your goal for that practice. You know what you're accomplishing. Anyway, thank you guys so much for watching. Leave a like, subscribe, and I'll see you next episode. Peace.